Good evening, Ma. Let me begin the session. So, yeah. So yesterday we were discussing this culture personality school, isn't it? Today we will move on to functionalism. It is both biocultural functionalism and structural functionalism. Okay. Today there is more content to discuss, so I'm not revising yesterday's session. But yes, when our class resumes on Monday, tomorrow and day after you don't have a class. And yes, I'll try to revise it. And now I'm sharing the screen. Please note and do confirm me once if I am properly audible or not. Am I audible? Good. Okay, fine. Sharing the screen, please note. So, yeah. Functionalism. Probably one of the simplest ideas among all topics in anthropological thought. Functionalism. And the popular anthropologist who has proposed this idea, it is Malinowski. And another popular and also relatively easy concept is structural functionalism, which is proposed by Radcliffe Brown. So what are the major propositions or major assumptions made by functionalist and structural functionalists? So functionalists believe that cultures work for well-being of individual, whereas structural functionalists believe that culture elements function for the well-being of the society. So this is the core idea of, if you understand this much, then most of the ideas are related to this and interrelated to this, so it will be easy for you. Say if you go and ask Malinowski why a cultural trait called as marriage exists, he'll say that it is to satisfy an individual need. Every individual has this need to reproduce. Every individual has the need to psychological needs of shock absorbing. So that's the reason something called as family exists. But if we go and if you observe what I have told here, it's quite clear that for him individual is most important, for Malinowski, isn't it? So I told that even some of the people of culture personality school also has emphasized and gave substantial importance to role of individual, isn't it? Then what for structural functionalism? See, for R.C. Brown, social structure is most important. You will understand what social structure is by the end of the class. For him, an imaginary social structure which he has visualized is important. And in a social structure, he says there are several social institutions. In a social structure, there are several institutions for him. What social institutions? Social institutions like marriage, family, or kinship, or political organization, or economic organization. And if we go and ask R.C. Brown why all these things exist, all these things exist because these are nothing but the constituent units. These are nothing but cultural traits. And these cultural traits exist because they want to ensure that the social structure is stable. They want to ensure that social structure and its stability and its order is retained. So for him, social structure is of utmost importance. Social structure is of utmost importance. So social structure is of utmost importance, and it is so important for him that even individual, when compared to individual, for him social structure is most important. If you read this, you will get more comprehensive idea. See, for R.C. Brown, society is seen as a tyrannical entity, means a powerful entity which is often at odds with human nature, which controls humans by injecting fears, anxieties into their psyches, and if necessary, sacrificing individual for its sake, sacrificing individual for its sake, which means for a for a society, it is its structure which is more important, and individual is secondary for a society. So that is the view of Radcliffe Brown. But whereas look how or what the view of Malinowski, society is seen as a nurturing, comforting cocoon. Society is seen as a nurturing, comforting cocoon emanating from and responding to human needs. For him, society is nothing but this something called a society exists because it wants to satisfy human needs. So everything is related to satisfaction of human needs, means individual is important for Malinowski. So on this simple note, we will further proceed into biocultural functionalism. That is nothing but cultural functionalism of Malinowski. Cultural functionalism of Malinowski. Why today attendance is less? Is that because of I heard just now that prelims results are out. Anyways, so individuals have physiological needs. That's I already told, right? Say, what are the physiological needs? Physiological need means to reproduce, hungry, or safety, or comfort. These are all physiological needs. And why social institutions exist? Social institutions means marriage, family, uh, education, whatever it is. They exist to satisfy the needs of the individual. I already told this. Also, culturally derived needs and 4 basic instrumental needs that require institutional device. So just like there are basic needs or physical needs, there are derived needs, and there are also integrative needs according to Malinowski. Derived needs means, see, once this basic needs, physiological needs are satisfied, then we may have other needs like derived needs, say even higher needs. For that also there are social institutions. And there are certain needs called as integrative needs. Integrative needs means, say, we all have this urge to remain in a society. We all have this urge to have a social security. We all as humans have this urge to have a solidarity as a support or a support system. Then that is a need for us. What is that need? It's an integrative need. So we all want our society to be integrated. We all want less friction. We all want less conflict proneness. We want less cleavages in the society, isn't it? So for that integrative need, there are certain institutions which maintain this integrative needs. Say if you go and ask Malinowski, can you tell me an example of one social institution which is satisfying this purpose of integrative need? He'll immediately say, why religion is a good social institution which is satisfying this integrative need, isn't it? Say, let's imagine there is a temple. Say we all go to temple, and when we offer prayers, community prayers, means we sit in a bhajan hall and we do bhajan, then definitely that is giving a sense of solidarity to us, isn't it? That is giving a sense of security to us. Likewise, religion is helping us integrate. So we all have an identity called as religious identity, which is integrating us, isn't it? So all these are examples of social institutions which serve the purpose of integrative needs. Okay. And instrumental needs means nothing but economics, social control, education, political organization. All these are examples of derived needs. When the basic needs are satisfied, in the next level we go to derived needs, isn't it? And for that derived needs also, we have certain social institutions, as simple as it. Then Malinowski also says that though Malinowski has highlighted or emphasized the importance of needs, he also said that social institutions are also important. Means though he did not use the term social structure, but institutions also are important. So according to him, each institution will have a charter. Charter means why, what's the purpose of existence of this so-called institution, what's the purpose of existence of this institution. Then each institution will have some people, isn't it? Let's take an education. Education will have a purpose. Education will have people, say teachers. Education is having certain set of norms or rules, isn't it? It has curriculum, right? It has activities. Activities means teaching, conducting tests, evaluating. Then it also has material apparatus, isn't it? Say right from the stage where there are ancient gurukulas where there is minimum material apparatus to the present times wherein we are using sophisticated technological tools like adaptive learning methods to reach students. So yes, material apparatus is very much involved in any institution, and of course it has a function to perform, isn't it? What function? Say that it education has an important function. Education will make an individual more knowledgeable. It instills wisdom, and it will make him more, isn't it, prepare him to the society, isn't it? So likewise, every institution, according to Malinowski, will have its own charter. It have personnel. It will have a set of norms or rules. It will have activities. It will have material apparatus and a function, right? Then yeah, psychological responses are correlates of psychological needs. Means yeah, the needs will have responses. Responses in turn will contribute to yeah, responses in turn will contribute to emergence of several cultural traits. Okay. Then of course structural functionalism will again come to that. So what is the background of Malinowski? Here you can see Malinowski here. He is Malinowski, and look, he has directly gone to the field. These are the people in the photograph or Trobriander Islanders. Okay, so he's inspired by Emile Durkheim, isn't it? Of course, sociology students will read a lot about Emile Durkheim. He traveled to Australia to study societies of New Guinea, and during Second World War, he was stranded in Australia, and so he was permitted to carry out research on Trobriander Islanders for 2 years. And observe another important thing I am talking here. How Malinowski also has inspired linguistic anthropology. He is convinced that learning the local language was necessary in order to present material from an indigenous point of view, isn't it? He's talking about emic point of view, though he did not use the term emic, but yes, he's also talking about emic view, means you have to learn the local's language. Just like Franz Boas has said that learning the local language is important, even for Malinowski also learning the local language is important. In fact, he gave more emphasis. He also tried to learn by fieldwork. He has adopted this participant observation method. He has adopted this participant observation, means he participated as a member of the community. He participated as a member of the community. And these are the Trobriander Islanders, Trobriand Islands, in which Malinowski has conducted his studies. And you must have heard his name already as a pioneer in fieldwork studies, isn't it? Malinowski is a pioneer in fieldwork studies, isn't it? And he used holistic approach. For that matter, even of course, even before Malinowski, anthropologists have an idea about holistic approach, but the concept of holistic approach was taken to next level or was put to maximum utility on his field work by Malinowski. Here you have to understand one very important idea, that is, for functionalists, there are two important things. One is need functionalism. Need functionalism means I already told that all the cultural traits or all the cultural aspects exist to satisfy individuals' needs. They also make another very important and interesting proposition. So what is that another important and interesting proposition made by functionalists, especially Malinowski, is that, see, various cultural institutions, various social institutions or various cultural institutions, various cultural traits, they are all interrelated to each other and they work as one complex integrated whole. I should also use this term, one complex integrated whole. And I say they are all interrelated according to Malinowski. So what's the logical extension of this argument, saying that all cultural traits are interrelated and all cultural traits are not only interrelated, but they form one complex integrated whole. As we go a little further, we'll try to explain with example, but for the time being, try to remember this so-called observation which I have made. Then this idea I have already mentioned, isn't it? So all societies have three important needs: biological needs, instrumental needs, or derived needs. For biological needs, certain institutions evolve, isn't it? For biological needs, certain institutions are evolved. For instrumental needs, you have certain other institutions. For integrative needs, you have another institutions. Now, we all know this very popular Kula ring system, which is a kind of exchange system observed in Trobriand Islanders. Exchange system means Kula ring system is an exchange system wherein, the Trobriand Islanders, certain objects, they will exchange, the name itself is indicative, right? Exchange. They exchange these items with neighboring tribes, and in some cases they also exchange these items with the same members in the tribe, neighboring tribes or same members of the same tribe. In this context, what you are supposed to understand is that Malinowski says that just by studying Kula ring system, it is possible for us to have a comprehensive understanding of the entire Trobriander Island culture or Trobriander Island society. Why? Because he already made a remark, right? All cultural traits are interrelated and they work as a one complex integrated whole. So you start with studying Kula ring system, which is nothing but an exchange of objects, exchange of certain material objects within the tribe or between the tribes. And if you try to understand its various interlinkages, you end up understanding the whole society. Say, for instance, if you want to understand the Hindu social system, what Malinowski will say, you start with caste system. Then you end up understanding Indian economic system, you end up understanding Indian political system, then you end up understanding Indian, cultural aspects like art or painting. So for Malinowski, you start from anywhere, but in this process, you will end up studying everything. Why? Because he says that each cultural trait is interrelated to each other and functions as one complex integrated whole. And yes, there are no newcomers. Fine. Biocultural functionalism and biopsychological functionalism. Psychological, I haven't heard about this section. I'll get back to you. Yeah, see, so he tried to study Kula's ring system. In this process, he ended up understanding about the political system of Trobriand Islanders, and he ended up understanding how alliances are formed, marriage alliances are formed within the tribe and with neighboring tribes. And he also understood how certain individuals enjoy more social prestige or more social status because certain objects are allowed to be exchanged only between these people. He also understood their feasting practices. He also understood their trade. He understood their magical belief system, because whenever this Trobriand Islanders, when they start this Kula ring, wherein they start exchanging objects between neighboring tribes, they do prayers. They perform certain prayers so that the members will come back to the island safely. So it helped him in understanding the magical belief systems of that so-called tribes. And yes, he understood that the so-called Kula ring system, in several ways, it is helping in integrating the society, because say entire members of the society will take this Kula exchange system very seriously. They'll try to cooperate with each other, and in this process, it is also contributing to integration of various members of the society, and that's how it is contributing to integration of the society. So yes, in a way, he's studying the idea of holism. Holism means he began with something called as X, and he ended up understanding the whole aspects surrounding a particular society or culture. Okay. So quickly, let's understand, because sometimes there is a possibility that a 10 marker also can be asked on Kula ring system. So let's try to understand what is this Kula ring system. Say separation between utilitarian exchange and ceremonial exchange means, yes, you understood. Separation between utilitarian exchange and ceremonial exchange. Utilitarian exchange means certain objects are exchanged because they have utility. Means, say in one island there is salt production, in other island there is production of rice. So both of them, members of the other island need salt and members of this island need rice. So there is a utility right for both the items, so they exchange. It's an utilitarian exchange. But members of the both society, they also have this ceremonial exchange. Ceremonial exchange means it does not have any utility, but they still exchange. Say some object, say to commemorate, say let's imagine in other neighboring tribe, there might be some function or there might be some festival. So just as a gift, they would have taken some object and they would have given it. And in turn, as a reciprocation, they might have given something else. So it's also kind of balanced reciprocity, isn't it? We study about this idea of balanced reciprocity in the academic organization topic. It's a kind of balanced reciprocity. And it's a classical example of substantivism, isn't it? It's a classical example of substantivism. This is how we can also link Malinowski to the study of economic anthropology. Substantivism. So what is the difference between substantivism and formalism? Formalism says that all the economic institutions will operate strictly in a way that individuals will maximize their profits according to formulas. But if we go and ask a substantivist and ask him, no, economic institutions are embedded in the socio-cultural institutions. A substantivist will say economic institutions are embedded in socio-cultural institutions. What is this economic institutions embedded in socio-cultural institutions? Classical example is India itself. Say you go to some places, say there is a place called as Proddatur in Kadapa district. And in that place, majority of the gold merchants belong to particular caste called as Vaisyas. And there is a lot of cooperation. It's not that they discriminate members of other caste to participate in the gold trade or gold business, but there is much more cooperation among the members of the Vaisya caste for doing gold business, isn't it? So gold business is an economic activity. What is the link between economic activity called as gold business and a socio-cultural institution called as caste, isn't it? So we cannot strictly say that all individuals will operate only by a motive to make profits. In that case, because of the factor or because of the reason that they all belong to one particular caste, they are cooperating with each other. That's a classical example. Likewise, in simple societies, economic exchanges are not strictly guided by profit motive. Economic exchanges are embedded in the socio-cultural institutions. Socio-cultural institutions means, say, let's imagine somebody belong to their kin group. Somebody belong to their kin group, though he may not be contributing anything to that particular economic activity, just because of the reason that he belonged to their kin group, they take care of his livelihood. So that's an example of substantivism. So this is what we have to understand when Malinowski makes an observation about ideas like ceremonial exchange. Okay, so exchange of ceremonial items. So try to remember these names: Saulava or necklaces, and Mawali or armbands. Okay, So this point I already mentioned, right? Possession of famous coloring items bring a person prestige. Say certain popular Kula items, if they are possessed by some individual, it will give him so higher prestige. So in a way, it's a kind of social stratification, isn't it? So this Kula ring system, a simple economic exchange system, is also contributing to hierarchical arrangement of the individuals in the society, which means it is also contributing to stratifying the society. So so-called simple societies which are known for their egalitarianism, they also have some element of stratification. They also have some element of arrangement of individual in hierarchies, isn't it? So yes, we began with Kularing system and we ended up understanding various other facets of the culture, isn't it? So just a few more ideas related to it. Just do a quick revision. These facts are not important for your exam, but just to strengthen your understanding of the concept of Kularing system. What is important for your exam is the ideas which we have discussed. What are all the information that we can deduce from the study of Malinowski of Kula ring system? Okay, ma? Yeah. So then, coming to, I prepared this slide just with one simple idea, that is participant observation. I just want to put to your notice the idea of participant observation. See, whenever I am talking with you ideas like this, if you carefully observe, I'm also generously using concepts in general studies paper 2. The reason why most of you end up getting less scores in paper 2 is that you treat paper 2 as some other optional and you don't include or mention the concepts of general studies paper 1 in your paper 2. That's the biggest mistake done by majority of the aspirants. Please do not do it. Learn to integrate ideas which you are studying from paper 1 into paper 2, especially those ideas in anthropological 2 you must learn. Say for instance, what is Jajmani system? Jajmani system is also a classical example of substantivism, isn't it? Kularing system, ceremonial exchange, which we are talking about, and in that context, we mentioned the idea of substantivism, which is nothing but academic institutions getting embedded in the socio-cultural institutions. That Jajmani system also is a good example of so-called substantivist approach, isn't it? So there is a substantial impact of both the functionalist scholars like Malinowski and also structural functionalist scholars like R.C. Brown and also structuralists like Levi-Strauss in performing studies on Indian caste system and Indian rural life. That is what you study in your village studies, and especially in the caste studies, you must learn how to approach, or you must learn how to integrate those ideas which you are studying from anthropological thought into your general studies paper 2 preparation, especially this village studies and caste-based studies. Okay, isn't it? So Louis Dumont is a structuralist. M.N. Srinivas is a structural functionalist. All these kind of ideas you must be confident in your approach. Okay, right. Now, just to give you a more understanding of the concept of functionalist, of course, after all this discussion, I'm sure you guys would have understood what actually functionalism is, and by this time you would have been clear that functionalism has two important propositions. One is need-based functionalism, and other is they have this important proposition that all cultural traits are interrelated and they form one complex integrated whole. So just to give this, so if we go and ask a functionalist, what's your view on education? What he'll say? He'll say that education maintains social solidarity and value consensus. Social solidarity means social support system. Value consensus means, say, value consensus means agreement on the values of the society, isn't it? So education prepares children for work and teaches them that actions have consequences. Actions have consequences means you do something, you will attain something. who told us all these things? It's the education which has taught us, and it provides skill which acts as a bridge between education and work. Skills are important for academic growth. Isn't it? Growth is an important need. Growth is an important need, isn't it? It's a kind of basic need. Growth is a basic need. So yes, as this basic need called as growth, to address this basic need as called as growth, society has evolved in a social institution called as education, which is a derived need, which is a derived need. So just to further strengthen the concept, I gave this example. Look at this quote of Malinowski: an ethnographer who sets out to study only religion or only technology or only social organization cuts out an artificial field of inquiry, and he'll be seriously handicapped in his work. He is nothing but he's saying adopt a holistic approach. The idea of holism, which I've already mentioned, means try to study a society, try to treat each cultural trait as interrelated and they form a complex integrated whole. So try to study a society in a holistic perspective. Don't try to compartmentalize your studies. That is what Malinowski is trying to say from this quote. And yes, for people, some of you must not be aware of the idea of holism, so I thought I'll quickly mention. Holism is nothing but perspective on the human conditions. This is more relevant to us. Right? So this is one simple illustration of the concept of holism. Okay. Then these days, UPSC is also framing certain questions on asking us to understand the contemporary relevance of certain anthropological concept. See, take some time and read this case study, which I am showing here. You will understand how anthropological concepts are very relevant even in the modern times. Read this. So these kind of case studies prove a point that role of anthropologists is very important in understanding the problems of the society, isn't it? See, recently Hathras rape incident has happened. If we try to look at it as a standalone law and order issue, definitely that's not the way we are supposed to analyze the society. Or say recently one honor killing has happened in Hyderabad, right? And spate of such incidents are happening in southern states for last few years, isn't it? So if we try to treat them as a standalone or an aberration, and if we do not try to address the larger social malaise, then that's what is happening now. We are not trying to address them. The reason being, policy analysts or especially policy makers are not sufficiently consulting experts like anthropologists and sociologists in policy making. Every social problem, if they try to solve with administrative solutions, definitely administrative solutions do not completely reflect the social reality. So they need anthropological solutions. They demand sociological solutions. So learn to use these kind of case studies which are coming in the newspapers and try to link them to certain anthropological concept. This is one very important skill which you guys must learn. What? Understanding the anthropological concepts and trying to establish the link of anthropological concepts. Is it? Am I not audible? Just confirm once. Everyone? Is my audio clear? Okay. Yeah. It's fine. So that's how we're supposed to learn to integrate the ideas which we are reading from paper 2, anthropology, and learn to integrate them to contemporary aspects. Then there is an interrelationship between the concept of functionalism and holism. By this time, you would have already understood. So just to mention that, yes, functionalism also gets richly inspired from the concept of holism. Just read that when I share the slide with you. Then yes, another important point before I end the discussion on Malinowski is consensus view that sees society as essentially harmonious. Society needs social solidarity through everyone sharing the same norms and values, otherwise society would disintegrate. Education benefits society and individuals by helping sustain social solidarity. Take a conservative. Say the reason why I am discussing this slide, somebody who might have, can anybody establish link between this slide and Edmund Leach? Yeah. What is the link between Edmund Leach and to the slide which I have now displayed? At least give it a try. Marxist approach. Okay. It can be a little more clear. I agree with you. It's a kind of Marxist approach. Anybody else? Would you like to attempt? It's a simple idea, ma. See, both R.C. Brown and also Malinowski, they have this general belief system that society is essentially harmonious and everything in society has to be in this harmony. Everything has to be working in such a way that it contribute to integration of the society. It contribute to solidarity in the society. In this process, they are ignoring something very important. Every society definitely will have conflicts. Definitely will have conflicts. Every society will have some amount of disharmony. Every society will have some levels of injustice, incoherence, and disharmony. That was totally neglected. That was totally neglected by this so-called theorists, especially functionalist theorists like R.C. Brown and also Malinowski. And conflict is an essential aspect of the society, and conflict is not always bad according to Marx. According to Marxists, conflict is not always bad. Conflict also will contribute to integration of the society in the long run. And if conflict does not occur in the society, if the society is not if society is all about maintaining a stable social order, if society is all about maintaining an equilibrium, the so-called equilibrium or the so-called social order, it can be an uneasy equilibrium, isn't it? See, in the name of perpetuating the caste system, for more than 1500 or 1700 years, we have systematically marginalized a large chunk of population from basic human rights, isn't it? See, we have this need to keep the social structure intact. We had that need to maintain the stability or order in the society. And yes, we have imposed in the name of rules, in the name of religion, we have ensured that a huge chunk of population were marginalized and alienated from participating in the mainstream of the society. So conflict is also good. Conflict also may contribute to progression of the society. Conflict also may contribute to progression of the society. That idea was not taken into consideration. That idea was ignored by the so-called functionalist scholars. And here comes into the picture the role of Edmund Leach about him. I'll talk in today's session itself at the end of the class. Then another idea on which Malinowski has contributed, though it's not Malinowski who has developed this concept, it's some sociologist who has developed this concept, but Malinowski also has made a mention about this. So I thought I'll tell about this idea of cultural lag. What is this cultural lag? See, this concept of cultural lag believes that human behavior lag technological advances. Human behavior lag technological advances. It's very simple. Now with the rapid penetration of internet, we all know how Indian youth are getting exposed to lots of Western values, isn't it? Western values like say premarital sex or unbridled freedom, and being individualistic, being hyper careerist. All these things, see, they are all because of the exposure to the so-called material culture of the West. Non-material culture also is gradually getting changed, but this shift in the non-material culture, it is not keeping in pace with the shift in material culture. Material culture is changing very fast, but non-material culture is not changing at the same rate, isn't it? Because just because we have adopted all the technological aspects of West doesn't mean that we have also adopted all the non-material aspects like culture or the values or the norms or the morals of the Western society. Did we adopt? No. And yes, this has kind of generated a friction also in the society, isn't it? Obviously, even today in the present Indian society, premarital sex is treated with contempt. Live-in relationships are often, people in live-in relationships, they are being discriminated because these are still considered as a Western values, and these are considered as a deviance, or these are considered as a rare phenomenon, even though under corporate many of them are actually happening. So yes, that's the concept of cultural lag. It says that material cultures tend to pass quickly, but when compared to material culture, non-material culture will have a lag or will take some time to catch up. And in this process, it will lead to friction or it will lead to conflict. As simple as that is this idea of cultural lag. Then now we will go to this discussion on Radcliffe Brown. Radcliffe Brown. Isn't it? As I've already mentioned. So if you go to Radcliffe Brown and ask him who is more important for you, individual or society, social structure, he'll say that social structure is more important for me. Individual is secondary. And he'll say that all the social institutions exist not to satisfy needs of the individual, because all the social institutions exist and all the social institutions function and all the social institutions are interrelated to each other. And in this process, they are ensuring that the society will remain stable, social order is ensured. That is the structural functionalist perspective. All the social institutions function. Why all the social institutions function? And he also says that all the social institutions are interrelated to each other. They form one social skeleton. They form one social structure, integrated social structure. But why? To maintain social stability, to maintain social order. Structural continuity is important for R.C. Brown. Structural continuity is important for R.C. Brown, isn't it? So, and he also says that social structure, according to him, social structure is nothing but it's a kind of interpersonal relationships, interpersonal social relations. It's an interpersonal social relationship or arrangement of people, arrangement of institutions, and arrangement of people, arrangement of institutions. They are interrelated to each other. But again, core idea is not satisfying individual needs, but to maintain structural stability. Yes, isn't it? So when men relate themselves to each other, they establish a structure, form. Every society has a pattern of organization composed of structures, association of men with each other. If you want to understand social structure, classical example is Indian caste system itself. Indian caste system, isn't it? How it tried to arrange people, isn't it? It tried to arrange people in hierarchies. And did it remain silent by arranging people in hierarchies? No. By arranging people in a hierarchies, it has given certain specific statuses to these people. And not only some statuses it has given, along with statuses, it also has assigned some roles to these people. Hope you understood the concept of status and role, which we have discussed in yesterday's class in the context of Ralph Linton, isn't it? It has given certain statuses. It has also assigned them with certain roles, and it also has made arrangements for facilitating interactions or for ensuring social relationships, isn't it? How in Jajmani system, isn't it? Are they no relationships? Yes, relationships do exist in Jajmani system. Whether that relationships are equally arranged or unequally arranged is another discussion. But don't you think they are kept in relation to each other? Yes, they are kept in relation to each other. They are interacting with each other. And in this process, a equilibrium or a social structure or a structural continuity is maintained, isn't it? So yes, social structure, a classical example to illustrate the concept of social structure is understanding the Indian caste system itself, understanding the Indian caste system itself, right? So you can see the stable interrelationship among the parts, stable interrelationship among the parts. So social structure is a network of So yes, social structure is a network of interrelated statuses and roles that guide human interaction, isn't it? So as you already know, social institution is nothing but system of statuses and roles organized to satisfy one or more of society's basic needs. Education is a good example of a social institution. Then, understanding the concept of structural functionalism a little bit detailed. So these are certain facts associated with it. Andaman Islanders, people on whom he had made studies. And object of anthropology, according to him, is to discover social laws. Of course, he could not arrive at any social laws, but when he has used this term, it has evoked a lot of interest. In reality, he did not develop any social laws. People actually expected customs function to preserve the social structure. This idea I have been repeating right from the beginning of the session. And ahistorical, concerned with structure and function, but not concerned with the history. Why I am using? It's because, see, evolutionists, what they're interested in understanding, trying to understand the past, to understand the present society, which means they are more interested in the history. Diffusion is also trying to understand from where it has diffused. Then evolution is why so-called cultural trait has taken origin. Then diffusion is where the so-called cultural traits has taken its origin. It's all about history, right? And that too, it's called as conjunctural history. Conjunctural history means, is the information available complete for us to arrive at a decision? No, information is piecemeal, information is not complete, and on based of this conjunctural history, we are trying to arrive at opinions, or we are trying to arrive at conclusions on culture. So they said it's bad. You study contemporary societies, you study the present societies and make an analysis of them. So they are not interested in history. Both functionalist scholars, Malinowski or R.C. Brown, they ridiculed especially these so-called historical studies. They say that, okay, you can resort to comparative studies, that's a different thing. But historical studies, according to them, they have criticized both Frank Boas, they have criticized evolutionists, and they have criticized diffusionists. For them, synchronic approach means try to study the present society. Don't be interested in the diachronic studies. Diachronic means across the time. Synchronic means in the present time. Diachronic means across the time. Synchronic means in the present time. So they are more interested in the synchronic studies than the diachronic studies, isn't it? So Radcliffe Brown and Malinowski, both of them are interested in synchronic studies, means they viewed all historical statements about non-literate people as conjunctural. Then they urged anthropologists to focus on role particular practices play in the life of societies, right? So evolutionist priest had previously explained the role of mother's brother in this patrilineal society as a cultural survival from time when descent rule has been matrilineal. But when he tried to study synchronically, the outcome or understanding was something else. Outcome was something else. That is how he tried to prove. Synchronic studies means studying the present. Then these are again repetition of the ideas. Just I'll try to quickly go through. Societal structures function to maintain harmony in society. So economic, social, political, and religious institution integrate society as a whole and perpetuate survival of society. Anthropology should not focus on individual actions, but focus on governing structures. Societal norms or window into these structures means societal norms will help us in understanding the social structures, isn't it? If you want to study caste system, then what you are supposed to study different rules, isn't it? Characteristics of the caste system, if you study, that will help you in understanding the caste system, isn't it? And it functions to reduce tension and conflict, promote stability, and uphold the social structure. I've already mentioned this. And yes, underlying goal of maintaining the overall societal structure and order despite individual motivation. Individual motivation is okay, but what is more important? Maintaining, isn't it? If you see different social structures here, ritual, economy, education, faith. So each of them are interrelated to each other, and all of them are contributing to what? Stability. You try to practice these kind of diagrams. No? If you can write, if you can include these kind of diagrams in your answers, no? Definitely it will add to your scores. Okay, this is similar image. Then now we'll go into this conflict theory. Though it's not specifically mentioned in the syllabus, you have to be aware of this now. So in our syllabus, we have only Edmund Leach, and yes, see what functionalists say, that functionalist theory says that all aspects of the society serve a function and are necessary for the survival of the society. Harmonious view, all elements of society are interdependent and they serve a function for the overall stability of the society, isn't it? Of course, Emile Durkheim influenced Malinowski and R.C. Brown both. Then what conflict theory says? There is always a conflict in the society because there is an unequal distribution of resources, and it focuses on social inequality in division of resources. Therefore, conflicts exist, and it will eventually trigger social change. Means another criticism on this functionalist school is that both of them, they could not sufficiently explain the cultural change. If we go and ask Malinowski what is cultural change, he'll simply say that if some cultural trait has lost its function, then definitely has lost its utility, has lost its functional value, then automatically that cultural trait will disappear. Then R.C. Brown will say that if any function, if any social institution or if any component part of the social structure, if it is not adding to the maintenance of the social stability or maintenance of the social structural continuity, then that will automatically get withered away and that will contribute to social change. But in reality, it's an abstract concept. It's not possible for us to remove one cultural trait from the society and see if it is actually contributing to social stability or if it is not contributing to structural continuity. So they are criticized for their abstract nature. Okay, ma? So that is about this conflict theory. So conflict theory is a theoretical perspective which assumes that if we want to understand the social behavior, Don't think that this is not in syllabus. No, it's very much related to syllabus. You have to have this basic understanding of conflict theory for you to better understand Edmund Leach. So social behavior is best understood in terms of conflict or tension between competing groups. So instead of interpreting social life as normally cooperative and harmonious, conflict theorists view society as an area in which different individuals and groups struggle with each other in order to obtain scarce and valued resources. And yes, it's all about zero sum game, means one will win, other will lose. No cooperation, no harmony, according to conflict theorists. Okay. So if we go and ask a functionalist theory, what's your view on education? He'll say that schools sort and select students for future high status positions, thereby meeting society's needs for talented and experted personnel. Schools convince subordinate groups of their inferiority, reinforce existing social class inequality, and discourage alternative and more democratic vision of society. We cannot completely deny the conflict scholars' perspective also. To some extent, yes, some schools are doing it, isn't it? Private schools, they generally do not admit students from certain backgrounds, isn't it? In that way, only those people, those students who have that privilege, economic privilege to study in such schools, they are the ones who are now occupying the talented or important positions in the society. And this is even more interesting. Children must not speak until the teacher calls on them and must regulate their activities according to the clock or bells. In a classroom overly focused on obedience, value is placed on pleasing the teacher and remaining quiet rather than on creative thought and academic learning. Isn't it? See, present education system, it has been developed to suit the needs of the industrial society, especially the industrial revolution manufacturing society, wherein you need obedient workers who have to come to factories on time, leave factories on time, have to produce maximum efficiency in minimum time, so they have to be disciplined, isn't it? So they should not think more, they should not be innovative, they should not be creative, because if they are innovative or creative, they'll try to question the supervisor, or they'll try to make a change in the machine. If they are want they will ask for a change in the machine, then definitely it will be very expensive, because technology is expensive. But the present society, the fourth industrial society, we can't train our children in the same way as we are training our children previously for a society which is dominated by industrial manufacturing. Contemporary society, it has much more, it's much more than industrial workers, isn't it? It has freelancers, it has creative people, it has innovators, it has social entrepreneurs, isn't it? All these is the possibility of the present society, where there is no depth of knowledge, no depth of information. And the era of internet, the era of blockchain technology, the old existing educational system has to change, because unless an important social institution called as education change, definitely it in turn will have impact on the other social institutions. Education will have linkage to family, education will have linkage to say for instance marriage, education will have link to religion. Likewise, definitely we have to bring a change in this important social institution called as education, which in turn will get reflected as changes in other social institutions, so that it will contribute to maintenance of the structural continuity. But if we do not bring a change in the so-called social institution called as education according to the needs of the society, then definitely there is a possibility that it might collapse under its own pressure. When you are not educating your children, you are not teaching them internet etiquettes in school, definitely they end up as a cyber criminal, they end up as a cyber bully, isn't it? So you have to definitely that in turn having impact on the law and order, that is having impact on the marriage, that is having impact on the family, on everything, right? So that is how, if you want to maintain the structural continuity, then yes, social institutions have to ensure that they reform themselves and they adapt to the changing needs in the society. So here comes Edmund Leach. He has done studies among this Highland Burma. In Highland Burma, he observed how he did not find any harmony, or he did not find any cooperation. And people who are occupying the dominant position in the society, people who are occupying the dominant position in the society, they are manipulating social institutions they are manipulating social institutions in such a way that social institutions benefit them, and yes, social continuity or structural continuity or social structure is maintained. In that case also social structure is maintained, in that case also structural continuity is maintained. But in this case, it's not by harmonious or peaceful interaction, it's not by solidarity, it's by certain privileged people, certain people who are occupying the dominant position in the hierarchy of the society. They are trying to manipulate the social structures. So they are trying to manipulate the social institutions in such a way that social institutions work in their favor and social institutions are depriving certain sections of population. But in this also, it's a structural functional approach. At the end of the day, it also is contributing to structural continuity. It also is contributing to retainment of the social structure. This is what Edmund Leach tried to say. Isn't it? So Leach's achievement was to retain a fundamental feature of structural function, the notion of equilibrium. Means in this case also equilibrium is happening, but this equilibrium is not by passive adherence to norms of the society or values of the society. It is social action. Means when at a point of time when people have observed that people in privileged position are exploiting them, they have revolted against them, and then they try to get justice, which in turn has established an equilibrium, isn't it? So yes, both of them are have visualized the idea of equilibrium in the society, but one say that conflict is good and conflict also will contribute to equilibrium in the society. So in India, so which Indian anthropologist has taken structural functionalist perspective and has utilized it to fullest is M.N. Srinivas. So structural functionalist perspective depends on the fieldwork tradition for understanding the social reality, so that it can also be understood as contextual or field view. Right? Field view, book view is an important concept of M.N. Srinivas. Right? It also is asked in 2014 mains. So important followers of this perspective: M.N. Srinivas, S.C. Dubey, McKim Marriott, I.P. Desai, Majumdar, and others. Right? So with this, I'll stop my class for today. Yeah, thank you.